Before we begin today's video, I'd like to thank my friend Ryan for recommending this challenge. Also, it was his birthday a few days ago, so wish him well in the comments. The Wasteland can be a cold and unforgiving place, especially when your wife was killed and your son was kidnapped. And even though he never actually had a son, let's see how he takes on the Wastes. Can you beat Fallout 4 as Mr. Freeze? Let's go over the rules of the challenge. Rule 1. I can only use the Cryo and cryo-based grenades and mines as my weapons. I didn't allow the use of legendary weapons that had the cryo affix because I thought that it might make the challenge easier. 2. The only armor I can wear is a Vault Tech lab coat and any goggles of my choice, in this case, welding goggles. I would have allowed power armor or something since Mr. Freeze has to be in a cryo suit that keeps him alive and gives him super strength, but that would have made the challenge way too easy. It's also set to very hard. That's about it for the rules. Ready? Let's go. I start off by making my character look as much like Mr. Freeze as I could, and after I make myself look very angry, I wait around until the Vault Tech salesman knocks on my door. I wasn't very sure as to what my special stats should look like, so I asked some of the people in my stream, and they ended up looking like this. From here the bombs dropped, and I ran to the vault to get a hefty dose of superpowers. My wife dies like she always does, and then I wake up from my sub-zero sleep. I made sure to grab the wedding ring off of my wife's corpse and promised to get revenge on whoever did this. We've all seen the tutorial for Fallout 4 a million times, so I'll give you the short version. Rad roaches, rad roaches, rad roaches, ooh, cryolator, rad roaches, rad roaches. Once I had all of the roaches trapped behind the doors, I grabbed the Pip-Boy and went to grab my lab coat since there was one down here. The rad roaches all disappeared after I grabbed the Pip-Boy for some reason, so the walk to the lab coat was peaceful, and from there I left the vault. Now I changed things up for once and skipped past Sanctuary completely in favor of grabbing dog meat from the Red Rocket truck stop. He was going to help me get the cryolator. I would have just added a mod so I could spawn it in, but my Xbox was on the fritz and wouldn't connect to the internet, so I needed Dogmeat to grab the cryolator for me. So I go back to the vault and ask Dogmeat to find me any loose items, and he grabs the cryolator for me along with 200 cryo cells for it. Now I go to Sanctuary and talk to Codsworth, and we get started on searching the town. The cryolator makes pretty short work of the bloatflies, as most weapons would. Codsworth and I don't find anything, and he directs me to Concord to see if anyone there could help. On the way, I stop back at Red Rocket Truck Stop and loot the items there, and get ready for my first real taste of combat. Freeze, scumbags! The cryolator is 100% a great weapon, and makes very short work of the raiders outside of the Museum of Freedom. Preston Garvey asks me for my help from the balcony, and then I level up. I should have done a little more research into the cryolator, as I didn't know it was classified as a heavy weapon, and my strength was only at 3. I needed it at 5 to get the heavy gunner perk, so I put my perk point into strength training. Inside of the museum, the majority of the raiders were frozen fairly easily, except for the last 2 who killed me brutally. Then I died again to some raiders on the second floor. After that, I proceeded a bit more carefully and was able to get to Preston. He told me that we needed the fusion core so we could get the power armor on the roof working. I agreed, but didn't actually grab the fusion core as I couldn't use power armor. When I arrived on the roof, I jumped like an idiot. The raiders on the ground were actually easy to kill and didn't take much damage. The problem was the Deathclaw. I was running out of ammo very fast, and when I did run out, the Deathclaw was barely half dead. I tried to gun bash it from the safety of a building, but that would have taken forever, so I just left the Minutemen to rot for the rest of the game. The next stop was Diamond City, so I could get some more cryo ammo. On the way there, I passed by Drumlin Diner, and was killed after I demanded Wolfgang give me money. Everyone in the Wasteland is so cold to me. The walk through the outskirts of Diamond City was actually incredibly quiet, which was worrying. When I arrived, I had to deal with Piper, and yes, I know I can speed up the dialogue, I just didn't want to. Once I was in the city, I went straight to Arturo's for ammo, but he didn't have any. This became a problem. A very big problem for the rest of the challenge. I went back to Sanctuary and waited for 3 days for his inventory to change, and then I went back. He still didn't have any ammo. I waited 3 more days to be safe, and this changed nothing. I asked my chat where I could get some more ammo, and they said I should try Good Neighbor as Cleo would hopefully sell some. The trip to Good Neighbor was actually the worst thing ever. I had no way to defend myself, and I was wearing a lab coat that had no damage resistance of any kind, so I was practically a walking target. Not to mention, I always have trouble finding Good Neighbor for some reason. Dead. Dead. Iced. Dead. Anything and everything wanted my head on a silver platter for dinner. It took me a pretty long time and some directional help from my chat, but I eventually got to Good Neighbor in a semi-whole piece. I made Finn back off with my icy words, and then completely ignored Hancock for the rest of the game. Cleo didn't have any ammo either, so I went back to Sanctuary and waited for another 3 days, and went back to Arturo in Diamond City. He still had nothing, so I put the challenge on hold for a moment and tried to kill him with the only weapon I had. That didn't work at all, so I loaded a save and went back to Cleo with no luck. I was very worried now. If I couldn't get any ammo for the cryolator, I was going to have to be forced to use cryo grenades and mines for the rest of the game. So I got to work scrapping the stuff in Sanctuary and started placing a crap ton of fence posts for easy experience, which I learned from Mitten Squad. I needed to level up so I could get the perks that would allow me to craft the cryo grenades, and this was the easiest way I could do it. I eventually ran out of wood for posts, and someone told me to make toolboxes since they only took 2 steel. So I started placing some toolboxes, and as it turns out, you can place them on top of each other. This will come in handy for a special surprise I'll have at the end of the video. Once I reached the max build limit, I went to Red Rocket Truck Stop to finish placing my toolboxes. I also placed a few more posts and finally hit level 10, which meant I could get the 2nd rank of the Demolition Expert perk so I could craft cryo grenades. Back at Sanctuary, I ran into Trash Can Carla, who didn't have any cryo cells, and then I went to the chemistry bench to start crafting some grenades. The only problem with crafting grenades was what it took to craft them: acid, adhesive, aluminum, nuclear material, and springs. The only components that would be hard to get in bulk would be acid and nuclear material, as they were pretty expensive. So it was time that I became an entrepreneur. I knew that purified water was pretty easy to get in bulk and could sell for decent caps, so I got to work setting up a few purifiers and started waiting for the water to come in. For some reason, it always took a really long time for the water to spawn into my workbench, but when it eventually did, I had 52 purified water to my name. It wasn't a lot, but what can you expect from 2 water purifiers? Now's that part of the challenge where I attempted to build up my funds, ammo, and grenade count. Lots of waiting for water to spawn in, lots of buying new junk for grenades and water purifiers for more water, and lots more waiting. After what seemed like forever, I went back to Diamond City to see if anyone had ammo, and to my surprise, Arturo had 3 cryo cells. If that was the case, I was screwed for the rest of the game. I stopped in to do the interview with Piper twice because my game broke and didn't register that I did the interview already, and then I went back to Sanctuary for a bit before I went back to Drumlin Diner to finish off Wolfgang so I could buy some junk from Trudy. After that, I ended my stream. Not really sure what to do next, I went to Lexington so I could loot the pre-war cash from the bank, and then went back to buying more supplies to make grenades. This took up the next 2 hours of my life, getting water and selling it for ammo and supplies, an incredibly small amount of ammo, mind you. I eventually started streaming the challenge again, and decided that I should go to Vault 81 since they also had a chance to have some ammo, and would definitely have some supplies for grenades. So, let's talk about Alexis Combs for a second here. Why the hell is her face just plastered with dirt? You live in a vault, lady, clean your damn face. I got pretty bored of farming for water, and decided that it was time to go help the Brotherhood with their problems, even though I wasn't going to be able to side with them. I planned on siding with the Institute for this run, but I needed to side with someone until then. When I arrived at the police station, I let Peloton Dance do all of the hard work for me, and then we got ready to go to ArcJet Systems to grab the deep-range transmitter. Once again, I let Dance do all of the hard work while we walked there. When we arrived, we were eventually ambushed by synths that Dance took care of quite well. I wasn't able to do anything really since I had almost no ammo and maybe 2 cryo grenades to my name. We eventually came to the part where I fried Dance under a rocket ship engine, and that wasn't very cool of me. But when I asked if Dance was okay, he said we were still chill. At the top of ArcJet, I let Dance take care of the synth and grabbed the deep-range transmitter. Once we left, Dance gave me a weapon and asked if I wanted to join the Brotherhood of Steel. I said yes, which was a lie, and returned to Sanctuary to farm for more water and supplies. For 3 hours. Now, writing this script down makes me feel like an idiot because I now know where I should have gone for cryo cells the whole time. But I didn't know that when I was doing this, so please don't chew me out in the comments. After I got so incredibly tired of waiting for water, I decided that I should make a trip to Bunker Hill, as Cricket would be there, and she was a weapons dealer after all. I really didn't expect much difference from her inventory compared to Arturo's or Cleo's, but when I got to Bunker Hill and started to barter with her, I almost cried. It was so beautiful. 151 cryocells waiting for me to buy them. Let's put that into perspective for you, shall we? Over the past however many hours I've farmed for water and ammo, I've never even gotten over 100 cells in total, and here was Cricket with 151, and that just made me feel like the biggest idiot ever. Now that I had access to ammo on a more sustainable level, I could actually do some quests. The first quest I decided to do was finding the railroad because I figured having another person to buy stuff from, Tinker Tom, would be nice. The Old North Church was already discovered on my map from when I was trying to find good neighbors, so I fast traveled there and got to work killing all of the ghouls inside so I wouldn't have any trouble typing the secret code to get into the railroad. Which was railroad. When I came face to face with the railroad, they told me to freeze until Deacon vouched for me. To actually gain entry, I had to do a quest with Deacon, so it was time to clear the switchboard. Really, all this mission consisted of was Deacon and I killing a bunch of synths with the occasional death from me. The synths were easy enough to kill since the cryolator is a pretty good weapon, and not long after we entered, we found Dr. Carrington's prototype. The exit was also filled with synths that were a pain to deal with, but all in all, it was a very easy mission. Back at the Railroad HQ, I'm accepted into the group, and then I make sure to take everything I can fit in my pockets so I can build more water purifiers and grenades. I go back to Sanctuary and start farming for more water, junk, and cryocells. That's really what the majority of this challenge consisted of. After I was pleased with my ammo count, I finally went back to Diamond City to visit Nick Valentine. Nick was lost on a case in a vault not too far from here, and it was my job to get him back safe and sound so we could discuss finding my son. The vault was in an old metro tunnel filled to the brim with triggermen. They had submachine guns which could do an incredible amount of damage to me very quickly, so I had to be careful. The cryolator still worked fantastically, and for once I had to play Fallout 4 as a cover shooter. After I cut a path through the metro tunnel, I arrived at the vault, which was also filled with triggermen. Not too much to say about the triggermen in here, just more of the same. Except for Dino. He had a name. That's all the difference though. Once Dino was dead, I could free Nick from his cell, and we were off to go confront the triggermen's leader, Skinny Malone. I sort of jumped the gun with this one and killed Skinny Malone and his girl before they could even finish talking. Nick didn't seem to mind, and we left the vault no worse for wear than when we started. Back in Nick's place, we discussed what I could remember of the guy who kidnapped my son, and apparently Nick had an idea of who it was. Kellogg. Kellogg had a house in town, and that was where we were going to go. Sadly, it was locked with a master lock, and I haven't even put a perk point into lockpicking yet, so I had to visit the mayor's office to see if he could find it in his cold, synthetic heart to give me the key. For once, I actually passed a speech check without save scumming, and the mayor gave me the key to the house. Cool. Nick and I entered the house, I pressed the secret button under the desk, and then I stole everything I could. I suggested that we use dog meat to track Kellogg, Nick agreed, and then I made Nick leave. As usual, dog meat was waiting outside of Kellogg's house, and it was time to put him to use for once. While dog meat was tracking Kellogg, we ran into a legendary mole rat, which, as usual, gave me a crappy weapon I would never use in a normal playthrough. Aside from that, it was your basic walk to Fort Hagen. When we arrived at the fort, I told dog meat to go home, and then I did the same so I could farm for more ammo. For another hour. Once I was done farming, I went back to the fort and got ready to fight a lot of synths. Originally when I started this challenge, I really wanted to keep the cryolator in its original form, where it acts like a flamer, but I am so glad that I went for the crystallized barrel, as long range was so helpful, even though the bullets had some pretty hefty drop. The synths inside of the fort were no match for my cryolator, and I froze them out of existence. There were a couple of times where I went to the big cryo chamber in the sky, but for the most part it was a cakewalk to Kellogg. He said that he wanted to talk, but talk is for the weak, so I dosed up on some Jet and Psycho and iced him before he even knew what was going on. I made sure to loot his corpse and the items in the room. Once I left, the Brotherhood came to the Commonwealth in full force, and as much as I wanted to join them permanently, I was going to have to betray them eventually. But for now, I went back to the police station, boarded the Vertibird, and blew up as many cars as I could. When Dance and I arrived at the Pridwin, I was told to go listen to Maxon's speech, and after I got done with that, I was designated to meet the crew. The only reason I did this was because I was hoping that the quartermaster would sell a bunch of cryo ammo, but as my luck would have it, he didn't. After wasting my time on the Pridwin, I went back to Nick at his detective agency, and we went over what we could do now that Kellogg was dead. He suggested Dr. Amari at the Memory Den in Goodneighbor might be able to help us get Kellogg's brain to show us a few memories. So it was time to take my piece of Kellogg's augmented brain to Goodneighbor. Thankfully, I already have Goodneighbor discovered, and I was able to fast travel there, and listen to Dr. Amari explain that she couldn't help us. Of course, Fallout 4 is a game, so there's always a way. She said that she might be able to hook Nick up with the augmentation that was attached to a piece of Kellogg's brain, but I was going to need to help by sharing the experience in the memory simulator Doohickey. Once I was in Kellogg's memories, I just ran past them all since I've seen them way too many times to count, and the only important one is the last one anyways. Apparently the Institute has access to teleportation technology, which was the info we needed. The only problem was getting to the man who could teach us, Virgil. He was in the glowing sea, and that place was chock full of radiation. Dr. Amari pulled me out of the memory simulator, and I was on my way to the glowing sea to find Virgil. Surprisingly, the glowing sea didn't actually have too many dangerous enemies in it at the moment. The only one that was even worth mentioning was a rad scorpion, which wasn't even difficult to kill. I stopped at the crater and spoke to the crazy cultists about Virgil, and they said he comes to trade occasionally, and that I could find him in a cave to the south. Getting there was easy enough, except for the deathclaw that was right outside of the cave. That I ignored because I value my life and my ammo. Virgil was very cautious about me and asked many questions. I told him everything I knew, and I said that I needed his help to infiltrate the Institute. Apparently, the only way to do that was by taking down an Institute courser, which was very difficult to kill, which was a lie placed in by Bethesda to make it seem like this next quest was going to be difficult. I would have to start my search for a courser at the CIT ruins, as that's where most courser insertion points were located. Since I've already played this game before, I already knew that I needed to go to Green Tech Genetics, so I made my way there straight off. Now, I said that the courser wasn't really that hard to kill, but the gunners on the way there were a little more difficult. Normally, this wouldn't be a problem, but the lab coat has no damage resistance, and I only have 2 ranks of toughness, so I still die incredibly fast. After I tried my hand at being the gunner's target dummy for a while, I eventually made it to the top of the building, where the courser was located. See, he was really easy. I also killed the gunner hostages and set the synth trapped in the room free, even though I was going to be working with the Institute. Now that I had the courser chip, I had to take it to one of the main factions. I could either go to the Railroad or the Brotherhood. The Minutemen were a no-go as I still haven't rescued them from the museum. I chose the Railroad since I never actually do their quests, and I thought it was time for a change. They analyzed the chip, and from there all I had to do was go back to Virgil and get the schematics for a teleportation pad from him. After that, I went back to the Railroad so they could help me build it. They told me I needed a place to actually build it, and I was off to Sunshine Tidings Co-op to clear it of enemies. There were just a bunch of ghouls roaming around the place, so it was pretty easy. The next step was actually building the teleporter. Sadly, I didn't have all of the special materials that I needed, so I had to make a few pit stops at Huber's Comics for a sensor module, which was frustrating since I couldn't find the key anywhere. Now, I have some bad news. The next hour of my playthrough didn't record properly, so I don't have the footage. Let's just talk about it while I show you pictures of my cat, Detective Mittens. Once I was in the Institute, I was taken aback by the fact that my son was 10, and also a robot. In reality, my son was like 70, so that was pretty freaking weird. Since I was joining the Institute in full force, I was told to go talk to the directors of the different branches of the Institute, which was easy. Then Father, aka my 70-year-old son, wanted me to clear a raider settlement called Libertalia, as the leader was a rogue synth, and we needed to recall him back. To make things short, the assault was easy with an Institute courser helping me, and in no time I was at the top of the ship and was able to recall the synth and kill his guards. I went back to the Institute to complete the mission, and hey look, my video came back. Right when I decided that I needed to start farming for ammo again. What horrible timing. Once I was done farming, I went back to Father to start the next quest, the assault on Bunker Hill. We needed to recall a few synths that resided there, but the Railroad and Brotherhood would be there too. So I'm gonna say something now before everyone thinks I'm stupid. Until now, I have never played a game of Fallout 4 siding with the Institute, so I'm gliding around in the dark here. When we arrived at Bunker Hill, I killed more than my fair share of Railroad heavies, but they never attacked me back. I guess since I was friends with everyone at the moment, no one would attack me. This made it so incredibly easy to go into the basement of Bunker Hill and recall all of the synths down there, and on the way back up, I was still not being attacked. Once I was done at Bunker Hill, I returned to Father at the top of the CIT ruins and was told that it was time for a directorates meeting, and I was invited. The whole meeting was practically about nothing until Father told everyone that I was going to be his replacement after he passes away, which definitely pissed some people off. He told me that I would be great at the job, so I went with it. The next step for the Institute is to acquire a beryllium agitator from Mass Fusion, but once I start this quest, I would become enemies with the Brotherhood permanently, which hurts me deeply, but I'm sure I'll get over it. Once I relayed to Mass Fusion, I immediately started to experience troubles in the form of the Brotherhood, who killed me before I got much of a chance to do anything. Thankfully, the cryolator is extremely accurate, and I was able to VATS everyone I needed to. Once I was in the elevator with Allie Fillmore, who tagged along to help, we started getting attacked by Brotherhood soldiers, and once again, VATS came in to save the day. We reached the bottom without too many problems, and I was able to secure the beryllium agitator while taking heavy radiation, and then I was attacked by a sentry bot who did not appreciate how cool of a guy I am and killed me. Once I had my bearings back, I was able to kill the sentry bot, and then an Assaultron came out. So many robots, so little time. Once I made it out of the building with the beryllium agitator, I went back to the Institute, completed the quest, and was handed another one immediately. I was to help in bringing a new scientist to the Institute. It was pretty easy since there were only a few gunners on the outside of the building to worry about, but I couldn't actually convince the guy to come out of his room, so they teleported the courser in there and knocked him out for easy transport back. Once that was done, I returned to Father and got to give a speech about how great the Institute was, and when I was done talking out of my ass, I had to go to Diamond City and repair the radio station a bit so the speech could be heard by everyone in the Commonwealth. Almost at the home stretch, my last quest before the final one was to wipe the Railroad from the face of the earth. My Cryo Grenades actually came in handy as I could throw a few of them before they exploded, and after that, the cleanup was easy enough. Now it's time to assault the Brotherhood. The plan was to infiltrate the airport and infect Liberty Prime with a virus so we would blow up the Pridwin. Not really an easy task, but I'm sure it'll be fine, right? Wrong. As soon as I started this quest, the game ramped up in difficulty. There were so many paladins and knights walking around in power armor, not to mention I still have the constitution of a wet sponge. At first, I tried my best to attempt to kill all of the Brotherhood forces before I moved forward, but I'm pretty sure that they kept spawning back in. From there I decided to move into the storage shed, which was full of Brotherhood forces. I died a few times and I was still running out of ammo. I eventually made it to the first generator and I was able to destroy it to allow some synths to spawn in and help me. Of course they didn't really help too much, as the Brotherhood would rather shoot at me than the synths for some reason, but I was able to eventually destroy the other 2 generators, which would allow the synth with the virus to spawn in and start taking Liberty Prime down. Sadly, this is where it all fell through. I had no ammo and no healing supplies left from attempting to get here, and there was no way I was going to be able to do anything to help if I kept dying every 5 seconds, so it was time for a new plan. I loaded the save and farmed for ammo for a bit until I was sure I wouldn't run out during the fight. Once again, I went to the airport, but this time I only killed a few Brotherhood members before entering the storage shed. Thankfully, since I just got done with this part, I knew what I was doing and was able to destroy all 3 generators without too many problems. And now we're back at Liberty Prime. I still had plenty of ammo and enough stimpaks to get past this part. The only problem that presented itself was Elder Maxon. He absolutely shredded me with his Gatling laser before I even had the chance to react. And stupid me quick-saved right before he started the fire. Many deaths later, and I attempted to use VATS while under the influence of Jet and Psycho, which I'm not sure made any difference, but I was able to actually hit Maxon and throw him off guard for long enough to kill him without taking too much damage. The rest, as they say, is history, as the synth finished installing the virus and Liberty Prime blew up the Pridwin, finishing the main quest. But that's not the end. Earlier I said I would have a surprise at the end of the video, and here it is. I built a house out of toolboxes. Isn't that just the coolest thing ever? And I beat Fallout 4 as Mr. Freeze and as a great carpenter. So this challenge had its fair share of difficult parts, but I think the worst was not knowing that Cricket sold so much cryo cells. If I would have known that at the beginning, I would have been fine. Give this challenge a try and tell me how it goes in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, think about subscribing and liking the video, as that helps me bunches. I'd also like to thank my patrons, Retrofit26, Jamie, Riley, and Untamed Pineapple. Y'all are the best. If you're interested in supporting me on Patreon, the link is below. Also, check out the Discord, as we have a lot of awesome people on the server. Link below as well. And until next time, stay safe out there, and peace out.